Welcome to today's video. Today's video is about how to never suck again at mentalism. And I'm going to be really honest from the off. It's a little bit of a clickbaity title because if I'm honest, some of the greatest things that I've ever learned in mentalism is through making mistakes. But the beauty of a video like this one is you don't have to make the same mistakes that I've made, because I could tell you about the mistakes that I've made and then you can avoid them using the techniques I'm about to share. So today's video, I want to talk about a few things that are coming up. I want to talk about how to practice mentalism. Now, this video wouldn't exist if it weren't for a comment that I received a few weeks back that said, well, you could practice magic, but there's no way to practice mentalism. And I've talked about this in the past on projects that I've released, but I've never really given this advice out on a platform like this. And I think it's really important because it's all well and good having a million mentalism effects, but if you don't know how to practice them, there's no way that you can go out there and perform them. So let me share a little bit of news with you first. The website is launched. I know I mentioned this in a previous video. If you want to see what it is that I'm doing, what it is that I'm sharing, you can go across to www.sleightoffmind.co.uk. And if you can't remember that or you can't spell it and you're in a pinch, just go to www.peterturner.co.uk. Now, the reason that I'm mentioning that is we're about to drop merch. So when I had the 13 souls, one of the things that were really popular were the hats that we released, and I must get 1,000 emails a year saying, when are you going to bring the hats back? When are you going to bring the hats back? They're back. We've got classic hats, we've got new hats, we've got new designs. These will be available soon at www.sleightoffmind.co.uk. So now let's get into the meat of today's video. I want to talk about how to practice mentalism when you don't have an audience, some of the mistakes I've made and that I've learned from, and how you can practice and retain information, because that seems to be the big one. People read mentalism and go, you know what, there's a lot of scripts here, how am I ever going to be able to remember them? So I'm going to give you some key tips that I've learned over the years that have helped me to be able to do that. So I want to talk about the 6 degrees of participant. Now, this is something that I created. It's a way that I practice all my mentalism, and I perceive every single mentalism effect that I perform as a piece of equivocal choreography. So equivocate or equivoke, magician's choice. And I don't mean that the effect that I'm doing is magician's choice or the effect that I'm doing is equivocate, but every single time I practice a routine, I practice it with 6 different paths. Now let me explain. I imagine myself sat at a table just like this one. And then what I do is imagine somebody sat on my left, closest to me, and that person is going to be somebody that's really keen, really keen to be part of a mentalism performance, somebody that can listen and somebody who can follow instructions. They're going to do everything they can to make this go right. That's participant number 1. Participant number 2 is somebody that's also keen, but they're so keen, they're so excitable that they're going to end up messing something up because they're not listening properly. But not messing it up completely, just scraping by a performance. That's participant number 2. Participant number 3 is going to be somebody that wants to be part of this, but slightly wants to test you. So wants to ask questions all the way along, might not have the best memory. Participant number 4 isn't really bothered whether they're part of this or not. They don't care whether they're part of this experience. They will listen, but you have to remind them of things a couple of times for the information to sit in. Participant number 5 is somebody that's really disinterested in being part of this, somebody that's coaxed by their friends to be a part of the experience, and they're not actively listening, they're not actively paying attention. Spectator number 6 is the pain in the ass, the skeptic, the person that's going to go against you at every single turn, that's going to try to stress test your routines. And that's the 6 degrees of participant. So what I'll do is I'll explain a typical mentalism routine, just something as simple as somebody writes down a piece of information, you get it using any technique you want, and then you're going to reveal it. So on participant number 1, this is going to be a breeze. You might turn to them and say something along the lines of, and I really like this line, this is a line that I created a long while ago, is I want you to think of the one thing that had proved to you beyond any shadow of a doubt that what I'm showing you is real. The one piece of information that I'd say to you, you know what, this guy, he's doing this for real. And I want you to take this, and then I hand him a billet. And I always refer to a billet as this. I never give it any significance. I don't say, take this business card, take this piece of card. I never give it a label. Now, that's something that I've done subconsciously for years. And the reason that I do that is if I make it seem unimportant, then it's going to fly by. It's not going to be an important moment in the routine. It's not going to be something they remember. Once you start labeling things, I think consciously we remember them. That might be me being a little bit overzealous, but I found that when you implement all these little tips and all these little subtleties, all of a sudden the performance as a whole feels much better. So I say, I want you to take this and I want you just to write that down, whether it's a sentence, whether it's 2 words, and now I do whatever it is that I need to do. So this is participant number 1, and I say to them, right, so you're thinking of something right now that nobody on the planet could know. And even if people at this table know this piece of information, they don't know that you're thinking of this piece of information. So I don't want you to say anything out loud. And now I'd go into my routine and I imagine this person's, yeah, I really want to see this. I really want to see it. So now what's happening here is this is a nice, easy breezy performance. Every single mentalism text that you read, every single video that you watch is going to look like this one. What they never talk about is this one. So participant number 1 and participant number 6, there's a stark contrast between the two. So now I move towards participant number 2. Now with participant number 2, they want to be part of this, but they're so excited about being part of the process, it's going to be that they're going to forget certain things. So number 1's actively listening. I know number 1's actively listening. So when I practice this with participant number 2, if I notice they're a little bit eager, a little bit excited, I slow things down a little bit. I say, right, let's just slow this down just a little bit. I want you to take your time and really think about this. I need you to concentrate for this to work. So I need you to slow everything right down. And I want you to think of one piece of information that would prove to you beyond any shadow of a doubt that what I'm showing you is the real deal. So really take your time. And when you've got something, give me a yes. So now I give them a few seconds to think and I slow everything down. I drop the tone of my voice. I'm slowing the entire choreography of the performance down to almost a halt. Then I hand them it. And I say, now I need you to listen to me really clearly. The way that I operate is I see what's on your brain last. If you have 1,000 thoughts coming into your head, I'm really going to struggle to pick up on this. I need you to write down whatever it is, nice and clearly. So don't write anything yet. It's going to be in block capitals. I need you to write it down so large that it's the last thing that's burned into your mind. So now what I'm doing is I'm slowing it right down. I'm making sure this person's slowed back enough to understand my instructions. And then I ask them, say, you got that? Just a simple casual, have you got that yet? Perfect. Now you do that. And then I look away and I talk to everybody else to kill the dead time. I take it and now I move into revealing the information. If I find that that person's starting to get excitable again or is not listening to what it is that I'm saying, I just slow them back down. So these 2 participants are fairly easy participants to work with. The 3rd one here is where things start to get a little bit more difficult. So what I'm going to do this time is right from the beginning of this, I'm going to start to implement rules in the performance. So with the first 2, I don't need to worry about that. They want to see this. The 3rd person, they're not really paying attention to what's going on. It's not that they're trying to mess you up. It's not that they're trying to ruin the performance. It's just for them, they could be part of it or not. So what I say to them is I say, right, isn't it interesting that there's things out there that we don't understand? I think the world's a much more interesting place when we peek behind the curtains at things that we never felt were possible. So this is what I need you to do for me. First, I need you to think of a piece of information that you feel nobody could guess, but I want it to be a piece of information that makes you feel positive, something that drives you, something that inspires you, but make it something that nobody could know. And even if people know at this table what it is you're thinking of or what the information is, don't even let them know you're thinking of it. So look what I've done there. This 3rd person, I know that they're not as actively engaged as the first 2. So the piece of information I ask them to write down is something that inspires them, something that motivates them. Why am I doing that? Because the pinnacle of the performance now is going to be spun on the fact that this person over here is now excited about what it is you're doing because the piece of information excites them. So that's for me where this becomes interesting. So now we get on to participant number 4. Participant number 4 doesn't really care whether they're part of the performance or not. They're on the mobile phone, they're not really paying attention to what's going on. So in that performance, I have a choice. If I notice that that's the case here, what I might do, and this is what I'm saying about practicing these routines, I might ask that person to focus on something and write it down in block capitals. Here's the important bit. I know from talking to these people here that this person is not as excitable as these people over here. So I'll say, can you just write this down, write it in block capitals for me so it can be read clearly. Can you just take a look at that so that you both know what it is? I'm not taking any chances with any of these last 3 people. I'm having somebody else verify in this camp that this is clear, it's legible, and that this is something that I can pick up on. Right? So something that can be read if it needs to be read. Notice how I'm doing that. I might even realize that this person's giving me a bit of a deadpan reaction when I'm talking to them. So now I might implement a one ahead situation where I also involve this person. So I say, you write yours down clearly for me, get it in your head. I want you to fold it up for me, so now I do whatever it is that I need to do. And I say, whilst they're doing that, what I want you to do, I want you to think about, and that now I start to roll a routine with this person. Of course, introducing a one ahead here gives me 2 chances at getting the performance more excitable. If this is one person on their own, I don't have the caveat of doing that. So when it comes to this person, it's take it or leave it. So what I'm going to try to do, if I find a person like this, I'm not going to draw the routine out as much as I might if it were this person. So now look at how I'm rehearsing this. With this person, it's easy breezy. I'm just rehearsing it exactly how it's described. With this person, I'm being a little bit more clear and slowing everything down. With this person, I'm making sure that they understand and trying to excite them. With this person, if it's just me and them, I'm going to show them something that's going to impress them, that's going to be quick, straight to the point, and then move on. So see how this is starting to change. Now this person over here, this person's going to try to test you a little bit, don't really want to be part of the performance. If there's other people at the table, I'll apply the same rules. I'll just make it so that everybody else is involved. I'm getting the table hyped. If it is just this person, I try to fit them into the same category as this person, but I'm a little bit more explicit with my instructions. I'll normally stop them and I'll say to him, right, would you consider yourself somebody who's good at following instructions? If they say yes at that point, great. If they say no, I'm not good at following instructions, you say, well, this is going to be a challenge, and I might change the routine if it requires them to write something down clearly, legibly, to something that cannot fail. So it might be at that point I implement DFB. It might be at that point that I implement an app. It might be at that point that I implement something that's self-working, because this person's really not paying attention to what's going on. So I need to really focus on seeing what my out is. But look at what I've just done there. Look at what I've just done. This person, I've not started to think about outs. I'm not worried about that. This person, I'm not worried about outs. This person, I'm not worried about outs. This person, I'm having people check this person's work. If I'm slightly worried about this person not paying attention, I'm doubling down on the instructions. And these 2 people, it might be that I start to think of a backup plan. What's my backup plan? Well, if I know I can one ahead off DFB, then it doesn't matter if that's legible or not, because I'm already planning now how to seamlessly one ahead from something like DFB into this. This last person's going to be a pain in the ass no matter what you do. And that's the best person for me of all. You get the most laughs out of somebody like that. If there's a group of people at the table, oh, you'll never get that person, you'll never get them, and you get comments like that. And I think those people are, for me, the funniest type of people. But I never make the mistake of putting all my attention on this person. So there's 2 trains or 2 schools of thought when it comes to this person. Some people say just ignore them completely. Other people say at that point that what you should do is entertain them. What I say is just treat them like anybody else at the table. Have a little backwards and forwards with them. With this person, if there's a group of people at the table, what I might do is realize that this person's never going to follow my instructions. So I'm going to make this person the star of the show. So I'll learn a technique like Whisper by Ken Dine, which is an incredible technique. It might be that if it's a pick a card effect, I'm just making this up, that person then finds that person's card and takes the credit. Because by involving this person here, you've all of a sudden given them a job that distracts their focus from ruining your routine. And if you can prove to this person that mind reading is real, then this person's more likely to turn around and go, yeah, with the body language I saw. And these type of people, some of them are egocentric, some of them just like to be the center of attention. So getting them on side and making them part of the process is easy then to get through the routine that you're performing. So now think about this. In essence, what I've done is I've had to learn a set to practice on these people. But think about the safety aspects of this. With this person, if I run into somebody like this one-on-one, I know exactly how to act. If I run into somebody like this, I know which path I'm going down. Hence the reason it's called equivocal choreography. Because depending on the person and their responses to my engagement with them before the effect starts, and this takes a little bit of time, I now know what path to go down. So what's really interesting about that is look at the difference in the introductions. The introduction is really simple. I want you to think of something that you feel nobody could know. One piece of information that proved to you beyond any shadow of a doubt that what I'm showing you is the real deal. This person, I'm slowing things down. This person, I'm getting them motivated. Think of something that excites you, something that you're interested in, something that makes you feel alive. That one piece of information you know there's no way I could know. And if I manage to pick up on that, it'll prove to you beyond any shadow of a doubt that what you're witnessing is the real deal. This person, can you just check that for me? I'll tell you what, can you think of this as well? what's happening there now is I'm learning what my outs are. So look what the routines force me to do. It's forced me to double check my work if I don't trust the person. So I'm learning that by just imagining this performance. I'm learning to make this person part of the performance and be a star. If this person turns around and drops the inevitable line that a lot of skeptics drop, well, go on then, Mr. Mind Reader, what am I thinking right now? That's a line that we've all come across. I'm prepared for that because I just respond, and this is the best response, bar none, to that question is this. You're thinking about denying the next thing I say to you. And if the person looks and goes, am I? You go, well, if you don't know your own mind, how do you expect me to know it? And that gets a laugh. If that person turns around and goes, no, I'm not, you go, thank you, because they've just denied the next thing that you said to them. There's no way out of it for them. You've put them in a quick double bind that's broke the ice and gets you back into the performance. I'll tell you, one of the absolute biggest sins you can perform as a mentalist is when this person says to you, well, go on then, if you're a mind reader, tell me what I'm thinking now. The moment that you turn around and say these lines, well, you know, it doesn't really work like that. And, you know, it's a controlled thought. And what you've got to do is get somebody to think in you've just taken your level of power from this and you've reduced it down to next to nothing. And now you've got to fight for their attention again. Whereas in that scenario, quick, one and done, no, I'm not. Well, there you go. Oh, very funny. And you turn around and say, I'll tell you what, there's only one way I could really prove to you this is real. It's if you do it. So I'll tell you, and now I turn to the person I know is good, get them to think of something, bring them on side, and now learn a routine where I bring them on side, and now they're part of it. And this applies to every single type of mentalism. It applies to every single type of mentalism. It doesn't matter what the routine is you're performing. If it's DFB, this person's going to be fine if something happens like the phone crashes and you get time to reset it. This person's going to be fine with that. This person's going to start being a little bit like, oh, you know, okay, whatever. This person's really not that interested. So it might be that you seamlessly move into something else. These people here, I can tell you that the moment that your app starts to go funny, they're going to go, oh, is that an app, is it? And at that point, I turn around and say, I'll tell you what, open your phone, go to your calculator for me. Now I move into the life equation. What I'm doing there is I'm mitigating all the problems that could exist in performance by knowing that DFB on this person is going to be great. It's going to be great on this person, but I need to slow things down. I need to double up my instructions here. With this person here, I need somebody else to look at it and to see what it is, if they're remembering it or if they're confirming it for a prediction. Somebody else reads it out, they're holding it, they're just the vehicle to get to the choice. With this person, again, people are going to double check their work. With these two people on this side, it might be that something starts to go awry or they start questioning things, and I'm going to say, you know what, take your phone out. I know I'm going down that path. It tells me that I need to learn something I can do with their phones. It tells me that something like the life equations are perfect out for that. But now I'm not worried about going up to a table and performing DFB. So you might be thinking to yourself, well, these techniques that you're using, what happens if, for example, this person over here is asked to write legibly and there's a group there, but they won't let anybody else see it and they don't write legibly? What do? Well, I take it back, and more often than not, I'll look at it and I'll think, what the hell is that? I'll try to decipher what it is. I'll try to fish around what it is and then reveal the information bit by bit until I've got a definitive hit. If the writing's not legible enough for me to be able to guess what it is, I simply take my pen and I scratch over the lines that they've already drawn, and I'll say this will make no sense to absolutely anybody else at this table. No sense whatsoever. Bearing in mind, I've got their piece of card. Nobody knows I've got their piece of card if I'm using something like peekaboo, because I've done a switch or whatever, and I just boldly draw over the top of their lines and I say nobody else at this table will be able to understand what this is, but you'll see it and you'll know. And I spin it round and go, is that what you were thinking of? And they're going to say yes now, and the rest of the table is going to react. And that's your get out of jail free card. That's going to allow you to seamlessly move out of that situation. Now I can tell you, I've been in situations where I've asked people to write things nice and largely and it ends up being this big. And in those routines, all I do is I focus on it over here, them not listening to that. And I understand that at this point, if there's somebody else at the table and I get it back and I look and I think, oh God, it's tiny, I don't freak out. What I do is I just go, so you've got something there. Can you just take your phone out for me? And then I'll move into the life equation. Now I'll run ahead to collect this. And I'll work with the person that's definitely going to listen to me. If it's one-on-one and they've done something like that, it might be that at that point, if there's no way for me to get out of that routine, I might then move into the life equation on top of what it is that they've done, or DFB or something else. And I'll say, well, I need to get to know how you think first to be able to get inside your head to get that. And then I'll just work a couple of routines, find an opening when the timing's right and I've got their attention to now move into a one ahead, and then I'll one ahead and collect it later. But what I'm saying is the one ahead is a really powerful tool to get you out of jail. It's one of the simplest tools, but it's one of the most powerful. So now let's talk about techniques. So let's talk about how you practice these techniques. Now, when it comes to a tear, a switch, a peak, whatever it is, you know, all these terms won't mean anything to anybody that's not a mentalist. But these things can be practiced, these technical utilities can be practiced simply by taking your phone and recording them. Now you might think to yourself, well, what's the point in recording these practices? What's the point in this? Well, I'll tell you what the point is, and it's a really, really weird thing that I've found. Look at this take. There's been no cuts, absolutely no cuts. I really didn't know where this video were going to end up. But I've practiced being able to speak for a long time, eloquently, and be able to get from start to finish. And this is why. If you go back to my earlier performances, or even just search Peter the Perceptionist Turner on YouTube, you'll find a film that's me walking around with a little briefcase. I look like an absolute idiot. And I sit and I look so ropey. On camera, I look so ropey. But to the participants there, look at their reactions. They're still amazed by what it is that's going on. And that's because there's a vibe when you're live. There's just electricity there. That connection between you and your audience, it can be felt in that room. And that doesn't often translate through the screen. So what you do is you practice in front of a camera. And when you watch it back, all the bits that can be cut, all the fat that can be cut out, cut it out. And then go back and get better at it again and record it again. And look when it's slick. Now when you go back, that vibe will be there. It'll be electric. But if anybody takes out a mobile phone and starts to film you, the fat will be cut off of it and it'll look amazing. So when you're practicing techniques, physical techniques, like that's more scripting and full performances, but when it's physical techniques, what you want to do is you want to sit down and you want to practice it so it becomes invisible. Now, it's ridiculous the amount of things that I've read on social media and forums where people say, oh yeah, but it can't be done surrounded. I don't think I've ever found myself in a situation when I'm working live where I'm not controlling where people stand. It doesn't hurt. People don't know what it is that they needed to do. They're not qualified to know what it is that they needed to do to get from point A to point B in a routine. So if it means that I'm stood there and I say to somebody, right, okay, you just stand there. Do you want to come here for me? Take this. Right, there's two things that are important. Just take a step back for me. You can't see into that. You can see your signature there. You can't see into that. No, take it off me. Hold it up to the light. Please keep hold of it. I'm moving them so there's nobody behind me. If I'm doing Midas touch or PK touches, I just move people where I need them to be. Midas touch or PK touch is a beautiful way to move people because you say, you'll understand why I need you to do this in a second, but do you mind just moving around this side and you just standing there? It's important there's nobody behind you. Well, the reason it's important when it gets to the end is that if somebody's felt a touch and there were people behind them, people just go, oh, well, maybe somebody touched him or maybe somebody touched them. And that doesn't happen anymore because you've moved people. So move people where you need them to be. Stop thinking about these restrictions and limitations. And I once heard a really interesting point, and I can't remember who made this point, but it's professional mentalists and magicians just go out there and do it. Amateurs find reasons not to do it. So it's, oh, well, this won't work because of that. Oh, this won't work because of X, Y, and Z. This is like this, so I'm not going to try it. Well, there's too much risk there, so I'm not going to give this a go. Well, you know, what happens if that fails? Well, it's too risky doing X, Y, and Z. Well, if the light's not right, it's not perfect. If we're surrounded, then this ain't going to work. Instead of finding problems, look at all the problems and find solutions. We're not magicians, we're not mentalists, we're not entertainers, we're problem solvers. And we're some of the smartest problem solvers on planet Earth. If you think about some of the stuff that we achieve, some of the things that we've created, some of the things that we've made it seem like we're doing over the years, from Uri Geller to Derren Brown, there's no problem that we can't solve. And if your biggest problem is that you can't perform it surrounded, then move people out of the way, right? And all these little tips and all these little tidbits are really important bits of gold when you really break them down. For anybody that wants to just get out there and try stuff, just go and do it. Don't be worried about failing. Just have something in your pocket that's a little backup. And if you need to get out of jail, the easiest thing you can ever say is, okay, were you thinking of a dog? No, what is it you were thinking of? I was thinking of a skeleton. Oh, well, that tells me everything I need to know about you. I think this will be perfect. I just needed to gauge how you thought to move into this. This tells me everything I need to know about you. It's one of the greatest lines ever created in mentalism. So now let's talk about the last thing I want to touch upon in this video, remembering scripts. Now, this is arguably the most difficult area of mentalism, especially if you have a bad memory. But let me tell you, there's no such thing as a bad memory. And what I mean by that is, obviously, if there's some mental impairment there that's going to require you to be able to remember vast amount of information, but you have a mental impairment and you can't, that's a different thing. Keep your routine streamlined, just go from A to B as quickly as possible. But think about this for a second. Guitar players, when they pick up a guitar for the very first time, they don't even know how to hold the fucking thing, right? They don't know how to hold it. So how do they get from that to being able to play their first chord? Well, it's really simple. What they do, they sit there and they learn the finger movements until it becomes dexterous ability. And what happens is they learn the dexterity to push on the strings hard enough. They learn the frets to press on. They learn specific chords. It's all simple memory that they didn't have before. If you say to somebody that's got no knowledge of playing a guitar, take this guitar and play a G chord, they wouldn't know where to start. Whereas if you take somebody who's seasoned and you say, oh, it's just G, D and C. Okay, G, D and C. They know how to strum in time with fretting the chordal structure. And the reason that they know that is because it's something that they've just worked on. And what happens is there's these neurological pathways that open up whenever you do something a lot. So the more you do it, the better you become. And it doesn't matter if the process is slow. Start today. Start by learning simple quotes. If you've ever been able to sing along to a song in a car, or you've ever been able to sing along in the shower, you have the capacity to remember. If you can remember the names of the people in your family, or you can remember the name of this being a cup, that being a dinosaur, that being a skull, that being a light, this being an incense stick, if you can learn all those things, you have the capacity to remember mentalism. But what you've got to do, you've got to start from day dot. You've got to start with simple scripts and just rehearse them. Now, don't even bother if it sounds rehearsed. Don't worry about that. If it sounds rehearsed, so what? If it sounds like you're reading it off of a page, so what? Because it's better to have it ingrained in your memory and then strip back than it is to try to make it seem like you're just bungling your way through a performance. That's super, super important, right? There's mentalists, I say, and I used to be one of them. Go back to my videos from before Bigger Fish Files. If you go back to my videos from before Bigger Fish Files, I'd sit there like this. And I'd go, you know, it's really interesting that we have certain memories, and those memories are ingrained in our subconscious mind, but the bridge between the subconscious and the conscious is almost impossible to pass. So what I'm going to show you today is how to bring thoughts from your subconscious into your conscious and then transmit them from one place to another. I used to talk like that, and I used to put on this accent. But I had to do that to get to where I am now, so it feels natural and it feels like my... This voice that you're listening to right now is all you know of me, but this is not my everyday voice. This is a 5% chiseled version, a heightened or elated version of my actual voice, because I'm from the north of England. None of you would understand what it is that I'm saying or speaking about. Colin Cloud's the same. You talk to Colin. Colin's from Scotland. His accent is... He's one of the most refined and greatest performers out there, but he's had to refine that voice and that script so it becomes a part of him. Now, what I'm saying there is this: just practice and rehearse. Even if it sounds like you're reading it off of a page, it doesn't matter. Once you've got it down and once you've done it a few times, strip it back. Don't be worried. Remember, the people that you're meeting don't know what you actually sound like. So it doesn't matter. You don't know what I actually sound like in my everyday life. When I'm talking to somebody else that's from the north of England or northerner, how we talk is barely decipherable to somebody that's American. So what I'm saying there is, when I'm performing, and when you see me performing, or when I'm speaking on the phone, or when I'm out in the real world, this is all anybody ever gets to know. So you can define who you are. It doesn't matter if your voice is not the voice that you usually speak with. Try to keep it as close as possible. It doesn't matter if it sounds robotic, monotonous. Halfway through making my last point, the camera died, so I'm going to go back a little bit just to go over what it is that I said, and then we'll call an outro on this. It's really important just to do it. So start today. And I'm going to tell you, I know it's scary. I know it's terrifying to go out there and do something you've never done. And I didn't understand this until recently. I really didn't get it. I was watching people like my friend Neil come to perform, and I'd see his hand shaking, and I'd sit thinking, why is his hand shaking? Like, He's doing a card trick. What's his hand shaking for? And it wasn't until the very first time that I took my guitar. Now, bearing in mind, I've been playing guitar since I was a young child. And I'm not a singer. I've never really been a singer. But I remember stepping up on stage to do my first open mic. And that was just less than a year ago. And I remember there were a knot in my stomach. I was panicking. Songs that I've been able to play on the guitar for years, I had to really concentrate to get through. And then the moment my voice came out, I was so scared. I was holding back. And I truly understood at that moment just how scary it is to go out and perform for the first time, or perform when you're nervous. And there's an expression: anxiety kills performance. And we're really anxious the first time that I went out and did it. But after I've been going a little bit, I realized that people really don't care as much as we care. They just want to be entertained. And it depends on the perspective that you look at the world as to how the outcome of the performance goes. Remember, anxiety kills performance. If you want to look at it that way, that's the way it'll be. But you can look at it from the opposite perspective. Performance kills anxiety. And if you look at it from that perspective, you realize that all you need to do is perform to get rid of that anxiety. And now, when I go to an open mic, I don't care anymore. I'm really not that bothered. What's the worst that can happen? You know, I'm not there to be the best singer. I'm not there to be the greatest guitar player in the world. What I'm there to do is give people a good time. And people want to experience what it is that you've got to share. Remember, you have a gift that very few people on this planet have. Regular society can't look into the minds of other people and tell them what they're thinking. So even if you're just close, you're still doing better than everybody else. So I just wanted to finish with that. The importance of practicing, looking at the 6 degrees of participant, looking at your outs, playing it safe, rehearsing, doing something over and over again. And it all comes down to the way that you look at the world. So with that said, I'm going to go because I want to go to there's a magic car boot sale, I believe, tonight in York. But for now, yeah, I think that about wraps this video up. I'm going to enjoy my cup of tea and get on with the rest of my day. I hope you have the greatest day. Take care.